If you couldn't have guessed from the visual clues, we have just come back from a 5 night visit to Atlanta, Georgia. Now, every single person has asked me, why did you go to Atlanta, Georgia, Tony? Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. We have developed a bit of a soft spot for the United States of America, not just those big hubs on the coast, but after sort of seeing it's sort of New York, San Francisco, LA, Vegas, we started to sort of explore a bit and say, you know what, let's try some different places in the States. And I found it really fascinating to go to some of the, I don't want to say secondary cities, that sounds dismissive, and I'm not being dismissive. Some of those alternative cities you don't always necessarily hear about on the tourist trail. Few examples that you may or may not have heard of, obviously, you would have heard of them all. But we've been to Boston, we've been to DC, we did a day trip to Philadelphia, Chicago, New Orleans, Austin, Texas. We did San Diego. We did Portland, Oregon. We did Denver. I'm probably missing a couple. Anyway, so we've been all over, but we've not been too many places in the southern part of the states. Obviously, New Orleans is a place we did go, but I mean, does Texas? I don't think Texas counts. Does Texas count? You let me know whether you think Texas counts as the South. Anyway, so the opportunity came up. Not been to Atlanta. Seems like an interesting place. Lots of history. And British Airways were offering the golden double tier points bonanza back in the day. And they also emailed me and said, Tone, you know what? Can we tempt you with a holiday to the States? Flights, hotel, we'll double your Avios. So I thought, what the heck? Let's do it. Oh, first class is on offer. We'll come to that on a later video, but yeah, this was my first chance to fly first class. That's a story for another day. Let's today talk about Atlanta, Georgia, and my experiences there, and some of the things you'd need to know before you go. Let's kick things off with a fun fact. With 108 million passengers going through it in 2024, Atlanta Airport is technically, is literally the busiest airport in the world. So when you fly into the airport, at least this was my experience, I had a little bit of nervousness in the old tummy. Thought this is going to be painful. Traveling through some of the other more regional airports in the US, even the bigger hubs, has or sometimes been a little bit disappointing, a little bit confusing, a little bit underwhelming. I have to say, not at all with Atlanta. So, despite the official title of the world's busiest airport, it was actually fairly simple to breeze through Atlanta. Yes, we got off the plane and headed through to the customs and the security section. I saw a bit of a queue and I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this, but it was very quick because fortunately the airport had plenty of staff on to process the passports. Good for them. Good for them. I've lost count of the amount of times I've gone to an airport, got off a plane, go to the passport control, and they have like one person, and you end up queuing there for quite a while. But no, good job, Atlanta, for such a quick turnaround. 20 minutes from landing to getting our baggage and getting out of the door. Absolutely impressive, amazing. Well done. Not quite the 15 minutes that we had in Athens Airport or Doha Airport, but certainly better when I've been to places like Miami. And I think maybe I've just this is my mental block, but I thought I was waiting nearly an hour to get my bag in Miami Airport. I didn't mention Miami earlier. I didn't mention Miami earlier because that was a work trip, so they don't count. They don't count. No pin in the map for a work trip. Them's the rules. Them's the rules. But the thing you need to know about Atlanta Airport, which we didn't realize when we landed, because we landed sort of at 8:30ish, but we realized when we came back. So when we landed, we just got an Uber. That was fine. Plenty of options. The one thing about well, actually, maybe I'll come to the Uber thing a bit later. The so we got an Uber from the airport to the hotel. On the way back, we got the MARTA, the metro line. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail. However, it is a little bit befuddling because we got off the MARTA and started wandering around the airport, pretty lost, pretty confused. Excuse me, where we're trying to get to London. Where's it? So someone ushers us into a queue. We get nearly all the way around to the queue. So hang on, this is security. It's not check-in. So get out of the line, go back. Say we want to go. Oh, sorry, mate. Yeah, you're in the. He didn't say mate. He was American. Sorry, guy. You're in the wrong terminal. So word of warning: if you are getting in the MARTA, to the airport, you're going to probably most likely need to get a shuttle bus. This isn't particularly very clear as you come out. It's not like transfers, so you have to head for where it says ground transportation. So if you're arriving on the MARTA to depart, you turn right and then right again. And imagine when you get off the bus, you turn left and left again. It's about a 10-15 minute drive between the terminals. They're probably even frankly separate airports, really. But bear that in mind. Certainly, if you're arriving late and think, I want to get the MARTA, you're going to add another maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes plus transferring and then getting the MARTA. So I slow down the footage here, as you'll see on the left-hand side. That is the shuttle bus, and not me wandering off in the wrong direction. But yes, come out of the main terminal. It's the first on the left. Easy peasy. Because Atlanta is quite a vast area, you have to be aware that quite a few of the different attractions, whether it's museums or the sports stadiums or whatever you're looking at, are going to be quite far apart and often not always walking distance, which means, yeah, well, first of all, the traffic in Atlanta is infamous or famous for being absolutely atrocious. The freeway, highway, interstate, whatever, goes straight through the middle of it, it's through the heart of the city, and yeah, it's gridlocked quite a lot of time. So I don't drive anyway, but I would recommend, if you care for my opinion, is not to drive at all. That gives you a few other options. Ubers are plentiful, pretty reasonably priced as well. The one thing I did find about Ubers in terms of pickups was there did tend to be a bit of a delay. It's not like anyone's just around the corner. I think 10 minutes was the longest wait we had. So maybe factor that in terms of trying to get around to different places. So, for example, when we did one of our day trips out to Stone Mountain, I'll talk about the things to do in the trips in another video. We couldn't really get a direct transport there, so we got an Uber, and again, it was maybe a 12-minute wait, and it wasn't that far away. It's just I think because of the way the traffic is and so on, you have to be a little bit forgiving in terms of the times. And another thing, actually, which I never knew this, but it's an important thing when it comes to Uber, or indeed if you ever get run over by someone in the front. For some reason, I don't believe the cars in Georgia have a license plate on the front. They only have a license plate on the back. So if you are ordering an Uber, be a little bit wary when it pulls up, and it might look like your car, might not be, because it doesn't have the license plate on the front. So our Uber driver coming back from the airport said that she did get they did get numerous people where they just got into the wrong cab, driven off to the wrong place, and so on. So keep an eye on those license plates. When it comes to the lay of the land and the geography of Atlanta as a city, it somewhat reminded me of Los Angeles, California, in that it is a heck of a sprawl. You have the sort of the main hubs. I mean, tourist hubs you'd either stay in would be downtown or midtown. It used to be, from what I understand, that midtown was quite rough and downtown was nicer. But we stayed in downtown, and that was okay. Yeah, there was quite a few homeless people there, mostly fine. A few sort of mumblings to you, but not really any aggressiveness. Obviously, a few people with mental health issues too. Around that area, there's plenty of stuff in terms of, like, there's the Peachtree Centre. There's a few pubs, bars, restaurants. So it's not necessarily a bad place to stay. But I found in the Midtown section was considerably nicer. This had a great allure to it. There was lots more trees. There was lots. It was cleaner. Obviously, fewer homeless people. It was a lot sleeker. So more of the modern buildings were, and some absolutely lovely neighbourhoods. Funny enough, you don't tend to often find that in a city centre. When we got off at Midtown and had a wander around, so like we're in this amazing tree-lined avenues. Like, this is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, if you are going as a tourist, I'd probably say stay in Midtown. That I felt a little bit safer there, a little bit nicer. Nothing wrong with downtown. That's also a perfectly valid option. But it also have a look at the attractions, because Midtown, it has more of the more of the highbrow attractions like art galleries and museums, whereas it's a bit more cheerful downtown with the World of Coca Cola, the Chick-fil-A, College Football Hall of Fame, those kind of things, the aquarium. So you have a bit of a mixture, but yeah, have a check out of that. But those would be the two places I would stay. And then you got downtown. You go into sort of the civil rights stuff is at Auburn Avenue and the Jimmy Carter Center. So those are the main hubs. Outside of that, you're going to get a little bit maybe residential or projects or whatever it is. But sort of driving through those things, yeah, you probably want to just stick to those main tourist areas rather than getting too off the beaten track and ending up in the wrong neighborhood. If you want to take Shanks's pony or walk, it's not too bad. Walking from where we were in downtown up to Midtown, if up to the potentially up to the museums, it might be half an hour, a bit longer. Yeah, it's pretty much a straight line. Once you get past the Civic Center metro station, it's fairly pleasant. The one thing I will say about walking, though, and this is usually, and I say this to my American friends, nearly every city I've been to in the States, the traffic has been, the drivers in terms of the rules of the road have been faultless. The turn right on a red and observing the crossings, they've always been very respectful of pedestrians and always given them right away. Not always the case. I found in Atlanta, people were just keep going. I don't care if you're walking, either I'm going to in front of you or behind you, but unless they're actually pulling right in front of you, they won't stop. So keep your wits about you and don't sort of fall into a sense of complacency and think that all the drivers will observe the rules of the road like their fellow American brethren. Atlanta has a reasonable public transport system. You have the buses. I'm never a big fan of taking buses in cities, to be honest. Even London, buses tend to be a little bit more spicy, for want of a better word, than other modes of public transport. But your best bet is, yes, the public transport system is called MARTA. And two of my favourite quotes that I've used in previous videos, which I don't know quite what to use for this, which is either save, martyr, why did you say that name? Or Ruiz, here's Marta. Either of those are pretty lame and don't work. But yes, the Marta system is not the most advanced. It's pretty straightforward. One line up and down, a little smaller line, I should say, across, but it does the job. If you want to get up to the museums or back to downtown or across to the Jimmy Carter Center, it is absolutely fine. But there's a major problem I found was the app. You can usually, I think, spend $1 to buy a ticket or $2 to buy a card. But I, being stingy, being tight, thought, you know what, I'll download the app, and all was tickety boo until I went to load it. And then I realized you can't download the QR code. I bought a 4-day pass. You couldn't, maybe you can, maybe I'm too dumb, but I couldn't download my 4-day pass to my Apple wallet. Obviously, Android, Google wallets are available too. And so it just wouldn't work. I had to have my phone connected to the internet to load up the card. So frustrating. I mean, luckily, I did have roaming, but my wife didn't. So they do have Wi, or they did try to have Wi-Fi, but it was very patchy. So what we ended up doing is, rather than having to pay a fortune to have roaming charges because we were there already, she ended up using my hotspot. Oh, pardon, using my hotspot to piggyback off to use the metro. But oh my god, yeah, it was the app was super frustrating. It didn't work properly. I wasn't able to, so you couldn't scan. And eventually, I figured it out is you have to turn the screen up as bright as it can possibly go, because so many people couldn't get through the barriers. And as we were coming back through the airport on our way home, the guard actually said to people, I just see in constantly go, turn your brightness up, turn your brightness up, turn your brightness. So yeah, be a little bit wary of that if you're trying to use your mobile app to get around. Maybe play it safe and just buy a good old analog ticket that you can hold and isn't prone to stupid glitches and other digital problems. One final point on the MARTA system is, if you are going to buy a ticket, look at the railcard options, because they are very cost effective when you're getting multiple day passes. In fact, actually, though, yeah, if you look at like one way fares versus 4-day passes, or however long you are, but yeah, definitely get a pass, because that's going to save you most likely a decent amount of money if you're going around town. Food and drink is quite plentiful in Atlanta, and it's good, old, honest Southern comfort food for the large part, but you can find lots of international cuisine, as you'd expect in a metropolis city in the developed world. Word of warning though, portion sizes. I go to the US and it feels like I've had a gastric bypass, because it's like, hang on, look at the size of that burger. It's the size of my head. And a pound of chips or pound of fries, I don't can't do it. I can't do it. So the food was really nice, but the portions were just unimaginably large. And I have done a previous video or travel trip saying ask for a doggy bag, but even a doggy bag would be like, hang on, that's enough food for the next day. And certainly with things like chips, they get a bit stodgy, they get a bit, they don't always last very well. So yeah, but you're going to get a decent selection of food. You can go to the expensive restaurants. They have plenty of food courts. I think like Colony Square up in Midtown area. We had the Peachtree Centre downtown. Usually quite large, quite a selection of food options. So that's still not the cheapest by any means. You might be looking at around $15 for a lunch, just for a sort of a poke bowl of Asian food or something. But that's going to be considerably cheaper maybe than going out into the into the restaurants. Or there's also a reasonable amount of bars to have some chicken wings or some burgers or nachos and that kind of stuff. So there's a good deal of options. Actually, talking about bars, don't expect Atlanta to be a craft ale or craft beer capital. There's a few decent places, a few decent beers around, and sort of local brews, but it's not kind of like Denver level of lots of different breweries in and around the city. So yeah, that's fine. But if you are a little bit of a beer geek, then Atlanta's probably not the place for you. As I mentioned, in terms of things to do, I'll do a separate video on that because there's a few interesting things that Atlanta has to offer. But what I will say is, first of all, quite a lot of them are different places, all dotted around the map. Um, there isn't a huge amount in terms of day trips and days out that you can do. So there's a couple of good ones. A lot of the time you may be in and around the city. So be aware that the costs can start ratcheting up incredibly if you are going to go to these different places. For example, the cheapest I could find tickets to the aquarium were £75 for the two of us. And that was going to 100 quid, over 100 quid for two adults to go to the aquarium. There is a city pass, I should say, which does start shaving things off, but certainly be aware if you're going, certainly as a family, and you're going to go to these different spots and different museums, it may well cost you figuratively an arm and a leg. So make sure you take some extra dollars, or indeed just brace yourself for the credit card bill when you get home. It is also worth bearing in mind when it comes to attractions are the opening hours and days of operations. Sometimes you'll find they'll be closed certain days on a Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, or they'll open early or open late. So make sure you do your research on that. A bit like us, we were there Memorial Weekend, and it was pretty patchy and hit and miss in terms of what was open and what was not, both in terms of attractions and things like quite a lot of the bars and pubs and restaurants were closed on Memorial Day. So bear that in mind because you don't want to start rocking up somewhere and end up in a bit of a ghost town with nothing but maybe the homeless people to keep you company. And there we move on to security. I didn't feel unsafe necessarily in Atlanta. As I said, there was a few homeless people, nothing too over the top. They did have actually, I think they're called ambassadors. So on almost not every street corner, but they'd have a person who sort of dressed semi like a police officer, patrolling around and asking if you're okay, and that's somewhat reassuring. But generally speaking, if you stick to those midtown and part of downtown, then you should feel fairly secure. We did head down to 5 Points because we were going to try and see the Capitol building. We got off the metro and there was a woman just screaming at the top of her lungs at anybody at that side of the street, clearly a mixture of inebriation and mental health issues. And we sort of walked a couple of blocks down, went towards the city centre, and there was almost like a guard of honour of homeless people. And it was like, I don't feel comfortable here. They clearly know that we're tourists, so let's go back. But yeah, if in doubt, just stay to those main central areas and you should be okay. Traveling on the MARTA is also maybe not the most comfortable of experiences all the time. Most of the time it was fine, but you get on there and obviously there are a few people with issues. A lot of people just sort of slumped on their chairs asleep, and yeah, the stations too, at least the ones we got onto, weren't the busiest. So you may feel a little bit unnerved if you're there late at night. So keep that in mind. And another thing on maybe say health and safety more generally is it does get wet and rains a fair bit in Atlanta. And there are a lot of places, whether it's just walking on the sidewalk, whether it's if you're on a day trip on a ramp, anywhere these things, a lot of it can get quite slippery. A mixture of the pavements and you have the grates on the sidewalk. So please take a cautious approach because a lot of these areas, sidewalks, grates can be deceptively slippery. And I saw a few people take a tumble. Unfortunately, also my other half did and had a bit of a nasty injury, but she's okay. Yeah. Either way, yeah. Take care. So, those are a few things to be aware of when it comes to visiting Atlanta, Georgia. I will say that it is definitely a place to consider visiting. An alternative. It's not just New York and LA and all that shenanigans. We want some alternatives. Uh, the people, so many of the people are super friendly, super charming, super nice. Again, it's very interesting history. I will say, actually, sorry, I will say, have a bit of a trigger warning because if you are going to do any of the civil rights stuff or delve into any of the history, they will talk about quite a lot of sensitive and difficult issues, and they don't tend to pull any punches. So maybe think about that if you're of a weak disposition or very sensitive, or you're having kiddies. They will talk about obviously lynching. So yeah, just have that as a warning before doing that. But generally, it's a fun place to visit. I'm glad we went there. It's always good to see something different, and I loved it. I loved the so many of the good things we did. The again, I'll do a full video on this, but like hang on to the botanical gardens, and that was such a beautiful best botanical gardens I've ever been to. The Museum of Puppetry. I geeked out. Oh my god, I can't help but geeking out. Look, it's Kermit the Frog, it's Big Bird, it's Labyrinth. It's Labyrinth, Sarah. Don't defy me. And generally, yeah, the Stone Man. And so anyway, I'll talk about that later. But if you are looking for somewhere that's a little bit different, a little bit off the beaten track in a tourism sense, and want something with a bit of history, a bit of culture, a nice bit of vibe, then I would say maybe check out Atlanta. If, of course, you are interested in an alternative city in the States to go that may not be top of the tourism list, then you can watch this video on Denver, Colorado, which is also a fun place for different reasons.